Welcome one, welcome all. It is Tuesday, the final one in the month of August in the year 2023. Tuesday, August 29th, 2023, as mentioned, 8:01 p.m. Central Standard Time. Today, a very significant day, a very somber day in the NFL, as every single team is now down to their initial 53-man rosters. We had a video here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. If you're watching it there, we are streaming right now to the YouTube channel, our Twitch channel, and our Facebook page as well, breaking down the Cowboys roster. We, of course, have all sorts of articles available for you at bloggingtheboys.com. Tis the season. The Cowboys open up the regular season next Sunday night on the road against the New York Football Giants. So we're here to kind of talk about all of that. I say we. My name is RJ Ochoa. With me tonight, I have three fantastic horsemen. You can see, hear, and read them all throughout the Blog on the Boys universe. You can also hear my dog getting comfortable on his bed as we get started here tonight. Like I said, I'm RJ Ochoa. Here, let's go in clockwise order. Tony Catalina. Tony, T's and P's for you because Sean McEwen not a part of the Cowboys 53-man roster.
Yeah, same thing that happened last year. I think they might find a way to bring him back. I know they said it was tough, but we'll see.
We will see. Billy Bootman says, hey, man. So I'll say, hey, man, to you, Danny Phantom. How are you doing tonight, Danny? Are you ready to talk about the 53 players that are initially on the Dallas Cowboys?
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this moment.
You have. You actually tweeted out a clip of the video I mentioned, the breakdown that I did on the YouTube channel. So you clearly have a high level of excitement, as does Brandon Clements. Brandon, what did you have for dinner tonight? That's what everybody wants to know.
I had some grilled chicken and some mashed potatoes, man. It was delicious.
You a gravy guy on the mashed potatoes?
No gravy. The only to be fair, the only gravy I ever liked was my late grandmother's, and nobody can touch my grandma's gravy, so I'll hard pass on that. And also, really quick, I just want to send our thoughts down to the folks down in Florida with the hurricane coming up, so everybody stay safe down there. And a little quick yowie wowie for us wrestling fans out there. Y'all will get the message on that. Rest in peace, Bray Wyatt.
You're right. Football season getting so close does obviously coincide with hurricane season, unfortunately. So it's a great shout out right there. Brandon, of course, it is a Blog on the Boys Roundtable. I know we don't stream all of these all the time to the Facebook page and Twitch channel. Maybe we'll change that going forward. But if you're new around here, it is a game. It is a match. There is a prize to be won. So we start off tonight. Zeros across the board. Tony Catalina, you've got a goose egg. Danny Phantom, you have a goose egg. Brandon Clements, you have a goose egg. Tony, you are reigning champion. How are you feeling about your odds here tonight?
I like it. I mean, I want to go back to back. I don't think I've done that before, so I'm looking to achieve it.
Well, you won't if I have anything to do with it, but we'll see. If you are watching live, you can, of course, hand out points to your favorite BTB, or you can catch the rewatch at your own convenience on any one of these platforms, or you can also listen to the show on the Blog on the Boys Podcast Network. But we are going to be putting the Cowboys 53-man roster up on the screen, so apologies for the podcast audience. But if you do want to see it, you can head to blogontheboys.com and check it out. Bear, seriously, the timing of this is just incredible that he would pick right when we started the show to go off with his dog self. Anyway, let's start with the offensive side of the ball. Here are the players that the Cowboys have as of this moment. Let's go big time takeaways. Tony, what is your first emotion when you see the offensive players? And it's worth mentioning this is all initial.
Yeah, I would say initially I didn't have Hunter Lepke on my projected list, and clearly I was wrong. I had a lot of people that I talked to daily who were kind of singing his praises, and I thought it might have been a little too late for him. I mean, he did have an impressive final preseason showing there, and based on what Mike McCarthy said talking to the media after the cut down hour came and passed, he said that Hunter Lepke showed a lot over the last couple of weeks, and then it kind of all came together for him. And so that's my initial takeaway. I think we knew what the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and even the tight ends were going to look like, but to see Hunter Lepke earn it, I mean, it wasn't given to him. He had to earn that. And Malik Davis is a guy that I know Danny is a fan of, and he's not there. So that's a tough situation, but good for him.
Casey Hammond chimes in on the YouTube side of things. Says, first thing I want to get off my chest is my sheer joy that Lepke, Jalen Brooks, and Wanye Thomas, obviously on the defensive side of things, made the 53. I would mention Deuce Vaughn as well, but he claimed his spot weeks ago. Yeah, I think we all thought that Deuce Vaughn was going to make this team, even right after the draft. There was no way that, that story wasn't going to come to fruition, but he did earn it, just in case anybody is doubting the authenticity of it. Danny Phantom, no Malik Davis. The Cowboys do have three running backs, and Hunter, as mentioned. Rico Dowdle did earn it. I mean, I don't think, even if you are a Malik Davis truther, I don't think you can feel like it was anything but fair and democratic, this whole process.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a Malik Davis truther. I mean, I let this preseason play out, and I let the training camp play out. I mean, to be fair, Rico hasn't given us a whole lot to to go off for us to feel excited about him. But he did this preseason, and I'm definitely pleased. I like the way it is. I believe they'll be able to bring Malik back. So I mean, I'm happy with that. With the running backs, and I will say this with Lipke too, is I was a little bit surprised. I agree with Tony. I felt like we weren't seeing a lot, and then he just had a breakout game. But I'm going to have a bold prediction here, and I'm going to say after 2 weeks that Sean McEwen, barring he clears waivers, which I expect him to, will have more reps than Lipke, just because the way the Cowboys are going to work this. I think he's going to more likely to be a practice squad call up, while Lipke is still kind of getting situated there. So that is my feeling about the running backs.
Let's see here. Trey offers on YouTube that Malik will make the practice squad. This is one of those things. BTB's Joey Ikes wrote last week how every year we have that dude that's like, man, I hope he makes it through to the practice squad, and we're always worried that he won't, but he generally winds up doing so. Tony, you lost 3 points for not believing in Hunter Lupke. So have you, Danny. Rick, taking them away from you. It's a tough time, apparently, if you didn't believe in Hunter. Brandon, we'll get more into the nitty-gritty here after you answer, but what's your primary takeaway here as we look at the offensive players the Cowboys are carrying at this moment in time?
Well, I think the folks that are watching and following along tonight, I think they'll give me some points for this. But I had Hunter Lupke on the roster back in the early summer, so he was one of those guys that I had high expectations for. And even on my personal 53-man roster that I did yesterday before everything went down, I did carry all 4 running backs. I did now. So it's good to see Hunter Lupke making the team. I think he's going to be a very versatile weapon. I did see on Twitter, Sean McEwen. I know that's Tony's boy. I saw things where he was being waived. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I got a really good feeling that Hunter's going to make the team, because I felt like if it was going to come down to one or the other, once one came out as being off the team temporarily, I figured the other was going to make the team. I mean, not really too many major surprises on the offense. Like the boy said, I think quarterback, obviously that was pretty, obviously with the Trey Lance situation, that was pretty much set in stone the way it was. A mild surprise, I guess, would be for Jalen Brooks. I did have him as like a fringe player on my 53. It was between him and somebody else, but that's a minor surprise. But I'm not totally surprised that he made the team. It's interesting that David Howman's guy, Simi Fehoko, wasn't in the conversation at this point. So that was I guess, for him, that was a big surprise. And then on the offensive line, I'll say this: it's a little thin at the moment, but moves are going to be made. I know Chuma. I know they're going to make that maneuver there. I was a little surprised with Farniok, just because at this point, as we're recording this, I'm a little surprised that there is no other center behind Biotish right now. So obviously they're going to make some moves, I feel, to address that situation. But at this moment, it's just a little interesting to see no other true center on the roster right now.
So you mentioned it, Brandon. The Cowboys did cut Chuma Edoga today. That is a procedural move. We know the Cowboys have to partake in some roster gymnastics. Chuma Edoga, Trent Sieg, and CJ Goodwin, 3 players that we can lump into that category right now. We're going to talk about defense and specialists in a little bit, but you won't see Sieg or Goodwin on that side of things, obviously. But Chuma is a name that makes sense, but still doesn't answer the center flexibility or center option, which you mentioned, of course, Brandon. In fact, I think offensive line is probably where we're all the most confused. Now, Danny, you have sung the praises of Josh Ball. And he got hurt. So, really kind of out of your control, but placed on injured reserve. He cannot return this season because the Cowboys are not doing with him what they are doing with, say, Matt Waletzko and Nashawn Wright. They are players who the Cowboys are currently carrying, which goes back to the gymnastics of it all, to place on injured reserve. I've mentioned this in all the videos we've done. If you're unaware of NFL roster rules, in order to be eligible to return this season, you have to be on the initial 53-man roster, which is why Josh Ball cannot, now that we know those circumstances. But that being said, Danny, we've been talking about the lack of offensive line depth. There's only 9 names here. like it's a bit of a scary sort of situation to kind of take a look at.
Yeah, indeed, it is. It is scary, and it's crazy. I was surprised by the Josh Ball decision. I don't know the extent of his hip injury, but I thought he would be a player that maybe they would be able to designate for return, and then maybe we would have him back for the stretch. I was under the belief that Ball played well enough to earn a roster spot prior to injury. And also too, the Cowboys they just don't have much interior line depth at all. I mean, TJ Bass, he had a strong finish, so he's there now. But if, maybe a little flexibility with Awesome Richards too. But I feel very vulnerable at inside, and also as you mentioned too, and I think this caught us a little bit off guard, even though that both Farniok and Hoffman have not played well this preseason. For neither of them to make the team is just like, well, so we don't even have a backup center right now. So I do think that there's still moves to be made. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but we definitely need to have somebody that's going to be able to play the center spot for us if something happens to be out. So Tony, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about like what's the one thing we would fear the most if that could derail our season, and he had the number one answer in my opinion, and that is the offensive line. And now to give us this, this group, this is what we're supposed to feel good about. It just makes it even more unsettling. So yeah, I'm a little unnerved about things.
Tony, it does feel like, I mean, that is it. I mean, that was your answer, but like, I almost feel worse about it after today's news, even though Chuma Doga's coming back, but the lack of a true center. I mean, everybody remembers. I mean, it was what, 2 years ago that poof, Zach Martin's unavailable for the season opener. Like you truly, we are now at that point. Like we're now walking through the landmines, excuse me, of the NFL regular season. And so the Cowboys are one breath away from having to adjust in a significant manner. And they don't have guys at that certain position right now.
Yeah, it's tough when you look at the offensive line and its configuration. It doesn't inspire too much confidence after the first five guys. And you look at the fact that Tyron Smith and his injury history, Terrence Steele coming off a big time knee injury, Matt Waletzko's had both shoulders injured. Awesome Rich is a rookie. TJ Bass is undrafted. Like going down the list, it's very hard to sit here and say, yeah, we feel good at offensive line. I think a lot of people nationally, even locally, feel there's got to be a piece added here or what they're going to do. It just feels really unsettled. So in a perfect world, which we certainly don't live in, all five of our starters will be fine and we should be okay. But that's not reality. That's not something you can bank on. And at the end of the day, it's kind of scary. I'm more concerned about the interior than I am the exterior. If anything happens to Terrence Steele or Tyron Smith, we have the Tyler Smith switch that you can pull and put him at tackle, but then that creates another hole inside. So I think that's kind of where the biggest question mark is for this offense for me.
All right. Does anybody have anything really passionate at this point that they have to get off their chest about the offensive side of the ball? Again, all of this is initial. We'll see a few little switches take place over the coming days, and everybody's really excited about Hunter Lipke. We covered that. But anybody have anything that if they don't say it, they won't be able to sleep tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it right now. I'm just so excited that TJ Bass made the roster. He's one of the guys that I've been a huge fan of since he joined the Cowboys as an undrafted free agent. So that was the guy, I've been keeping my eye on. He's got a lot of versatility, and he has the great fundamentals. He's got a strong base. I was surprised that he wasn't drafted this past year, and when the Cowboys got him undrafted, I thought he was going to be a diamond in the rough, and so far he's made the initial 53. So I'm just super excited about that.
Just so you all know, you each were deducted 3 points for complaining about the lack of offensive line depth on the Cowboys, because every team is in that situation saying you can't have 5 first-rounders on the offensive line anymore. So do all of you feel stupid? I mean, at least it was an attack on all of you all at once.
A little bit. It was a very good statement. That's a very good point.
Our score, and we'll kind of, bounce back to the offense in a little bit. But so far, Tony sitting at 9 points. Danny, you've got 10. Brandon, you are in the lead with 12. Still a lot of ball game left. Danny, what's in that mug?
Water.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't ever really drink just straight up water out of a coffee mug like that. So you're kind of like the people on like sitcoms right now. You know what I mean?
It's a courtesy to dishes. You just don't want to dirty up another dish. This is my coffee cup from this morning. Just keep filling it with the water. I mean, it's practical, RJ.
That's not my cup of tea in terms of how I rock. I actually am drinking hot tea right now. So this is my cup of tea. Tony, you have that looks like one of those like powder things that you put in a water bottle.
Exactly.
I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Vantage. Yeah. Okay. Clarence has awarded you a point, Danny, and so has Kevin for drinking water out of a coffee cup, because he does that too. So you guys all think that these are stupid like tangents I take you all on, but think about that. Danny just picked up points. But Danny, you did just lose a point for your pronunciation of water. So hey, I mean,
Was
we're
it-
all from
was
different
it the-
parts of the world.
Hey, I'm a little bit English. I say water. I say it the right way, not the water. Water. It's not a D.
Well, there was a 1-point wash, not involving water, but Danny, you now are in the lead with 15 points. So congratulations to you. Again, nobody ever doubt the directions that I want to steer this ship in, because you never know where you'll rake in some points. Okay, let's head to the defensive side of the ball. We have gone ahead and put Micah Parsons under defensive ends because, well, I mean, obviously, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong, Sam Williams, and Dante Fowler Jr. round out the outside pass rushers for the Cowboys. They are going heavy in the middle. Mozzie Smith, of course, Jonathan Hankins, Osa Odigizua, Junior Fahoko, Chauncey Golston, and apologies once again. When we first put the article out at Blogging the Boys, we accidentally left off Neville Gallimore. He is on the 53-man roster. 4 linebackers, although one of them kind of a newbie in that sense, and Marquise Bell joining Leighton Vander Esch, Damone Clark, Devin Harper. Marquise Bell is 7 cornerbacks the Cowboys have. Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore, Deron Bland, Jordan Lewis activated off of the PUP list today, so he is part of the 53-man roster now. The newbie, really, Noah Igbenogany. Trey Lance no longer having to do like rookie duties around the star, I guess. Eric Scott Jr. and Nashawn Wright, who is a candidate to head to injured reserve. We've got 5 safeties, including Wanye Thomas. Sorry about the misspelling there. And 2 specialists, as we mentioned, Trent Sieg and CJ Goodwin coming back after things are stabilized. Brandon, your big takeaway right here, outside of Noah Igbenogany. We'll get there in a moment. So other than that, your big takeaway looking at the defenders the Cowboys have.
The amount of cornerbacks. I know we were talking about Noah, but 7 cornerbacks, I didn't see that coming. I thought maybe 5 or 6, but 7 was interesting. We'll see how things play out here with that recent trade, but yeah, 7 cornerbacks. I thought that was a little interesting. And then, the safety position, I know there's 5 listed, but Marquise is kind of in that conversation of he can do a little bit of both. So I'm very happy about that. And it's just interesting because there's 3 true linebackers currently on the roster with LVE and Clark and Harper. So I'm curious to see how the Cowboys are going to fill out that area. I know we have safeties that can kind of do different things, how Dan Quinn deploys them, but I do feel like there's going to be some movement at that position. I think the Cowboys are not done at linebacker. There are some names out on the market to keep an eye on. So I think we're not done there, but the rest of it, I'm not too concerned, I'm not too surprised. Micah Parsons, obviously, Lawrence, Armstrong, Williams, Fowler. I mean, for me, I was very disappointed that my guy Isaiah Land didn't make the team, and he is one of those guys that I am worried about. I know we were talking about it earlier about if he clears waivers, can he get back to the Cowboys? I hope he does, because I think he's one of those guys where I think if he gets a little bit more work in, he's got a chance to be a heck of a football player. So that was kind of my one little, my one thing that I was like, man, I wish we could have gotten him on the 53. But hopefully he comes back when he clears waivers, and then he can be stashed for a bit.
Tony, we'll get to Isaiah Land in a moment. Let's stick with the cornerback discussion just for now. In terms of notable players left off the Cowboys roster, again, Isaiah Land is there. Jabril Cox, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kelvin Joseph was part of the trade to get Noah Igbenogany on the roster. Malik Davis, Simi Fehoko, we already talked about, Quentin Bohanna, but Kelvin Joseph's gone. Jordan Lewis is back. Noah Igbenogany is in. That's a lot of change that we really weren't expecting even 24 hours ago at this particular position group. We're very, very confident in the top of it all. And the willingness to trade away Kelvin Joseph certainly suggests that the Cowboys believe Jordan Lewis is closer than most of us. And Brandon, I know you were shocked by 7 corners, but Nashawn Wright probably headed to injured reserve, so more of a 6 situation, and even Igbenogany not really going to contribute right away. So 5 dudes to kind of lean on in the here and now. Do you feel like the guys that they have picked, Tony, can handle that challenge even without Kelvin Joseph around?
Yeah, I think that they understand that Kelvin Joseph, some people thought he had a strong camp. I thought he showed some things on the inside, but that wasn't really what they're looking for. I think they are banking on Jordan Lewis being a little closer than we probably thought, like you mentioned. And, we have guys like Deron Bland, who plays the inside, specifically or at the beginning initially, and can move outside. So I think the way that they wanted to construct their roster was to find another outside guy. And they did that with this trade. So I'm confident with who they have. 1 through 3, I'm really, really stoked about. I think we understand that Bland, Diggs and Gilmore is solid 3. Outside of that, Eric Scott didn't show me too much. I mean, I know he's a rookie.
He cooled off so fast. Yeah,
really
like his
fast.
name chilled, like basically from the moment he had the first interception at training camp, and then it was like nothing but ice water, the water that you and Brandon are drinking. I guess Danny too are drinking.
Exactly. So it's for him, like, I don't know how much we're going to lean on him early on, and maybe a situation for a hand gets forced due to injuries or whatever, but there is enough talent there. And I saw, shout out to Patrick Walker from DallasCowboys.com. He's really confident, and I think we all should be, just at how this cornerback room is constructed. Because if Jordan Lewis is the fourth cornerback, and I know he's going to take some time to work into it, that's a solid unit. And I think that's something we could be excited about. You got Izzy Mukawamu, who has position flexibility. The safeties we have is probably the deepest position on the team. So I think safety is going to be kind of that hybrid situation at corner and linebacker, right? So those safeties are going to be used in a multitude of different ways at all different levels. So as secondary as a whole and cornerback specifically, I think Cowboys Nation should be pretty settled there.
Yeah, it feels like the Cowboys defense is divided into just two groups: pass rushers and dudes that aren't rushing the passer. Like that's it. Like, you know what I mean? Like they really kind of have a line in the sand that works that way. Danny Phantom, the Kelvin Joseph trade specifically. Actually, if we rewind a few days, Michael Gelkin of the Dallas Morning News on Saturday night, as soon as the preseason game was over, had a bunch of takeaways and some great nuggets in an article over the Dallas Morning News. Everybody go subscribe, and talked about how there was likely going to be a mass exodus from 2021 draftees from the Cowboys roster. Obviously, Micah Parsons headlines that group, but Quentin Bohanna is gone. Jabril Cox is gone. We could talk about the linebackers in a little bit. And Kelvin Joseph is gone. And there was a lot of pushback. I wrote an article about this myself, people saying, I don't see how they can move on from Kelvin Joseph. When I wrote it, I was like, I don't see it myself, but I trust Michael Gelkin. And he was right. The Cowboys did not cut Kelvin Joseph. I think we're all probably pleased, right? Like, if you were going to cut him, at least you got a free look at somebody else in the process. But do you feel like this was the right decision? Especially given that, actually, Danny, you're the only person I've ever known who tries to predict game day inactives. Noah Igbenogany is probably going to be an inactive for the Cowboys next Sunday night. And so in that sense, was it worth it? Was it not? Was this the right way to go about Kelvin Joseph's role on the team specifically?
I think it was I like the thinking behind it, because I like them acknowledging that we have issues on the outside, and and that Kelvin Joseph's role was basically pretty limited. So I like that thinking, like they're recognizing it and they're doing something about it. Now, do I like the decision they made to do something about it? I don't know. I feel a little uneasy about the guy that we traded for. I haven't, everything I've seen so far. He has had struggles in Miami, and so I'm not going to just suddenly feel confident about our outside corner depth just because we have Iggy on our team now. But I'm a little disappointed that one of my dark horses, Josh Butler, didn't make it. When we heard the news about Kelvin Joseph, I started thinking, hey, maybe this means that Josh Butler is going to somehow squeeze in, because he's an outside guy. And of course, but that's not part of their plans. So I guess I agree with Tony. And I do think that with a healthy Jordan Lewis, that we are 4 strong, because the flex of Deron Bland allows us to be. But outside of that, there's just so many questions. You guys know how I feel about Nahshon Wright. I feel almost the same way about Eric Scott Jr., except that we have to give him a chance first before I really start to just not to be disappointed in him. But the other guys, I don't know. The great thing about it is the Cowboys have so many versatile defensive backs and guys that can play in coverage, like you already mentioned Mukuamu, but Wanye, and just and so I feel like they're okay, but I still have a little bit of concerns about their outside corner depth.
Tony, you raised your hand very politely.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys know this, but for the people listening who don't know this, like Noah Inagani, I'm sorry I butchered his name there, but he's actually younger than Eric Scott Jr. is, and he's a former first-round pick, been in the league a couple of years. Obviously, not the best pedigree, otherwise the team wouldn't have moved on from him. But I think he, understanding that he's 23 years old, still very young, can get into a Dan Quinn system. They like his speed, they like his athleticism. For a 5th cornerback, I feel like you could do much worse, and I think we may have upgraded that with this swap.
I think an important note to mention on Noah Igbenogany, you have to say it like 10 times to get really comfortable with it. That's what I did, what was it now, 3 years ago during the draft. The Dolphins did not pick up his 5th-year option, so this is a contract year for him. We love to look ahead at future comp picks. So if the Cowboys are able to scrap something together here, you just never know. Can they recoup the 4th round pick they traded for Trey Lance? Can they recoup the 5th round pick they traded for Eric Scott Jr.? I mean, they fast forward the timeline, obviously, 1 year relative to Kelvin Joseph, who still has a year after this remaining on his rookie contract, given that he was drafted in 2021. But Brandon, again, I don't mean to incite panic because this is a pretty, it's not a positive day. It's really horrible that so many people lost their jobs in the NFL. We're certainly rooting for them and whatever comes next. But it's an exciting day with regards to the regular season, getting a look at this is the group, right? Like this is the team that we all hope can obviously do the whole thing. But if we fast forward to next Sunday night, Brandon, and I played the game like predicting the inactives. Okay, Trayvon Stephon, Deron Bland, great, awesome. They've been balling out. We're solid. We're good to go there. Jordan Lewis hasn't played a lick of football yet. Okay, well, that's kind of terrifying. There's no way Noah is going to be active next Sunday night, given that he literally just joined the team today. Eric Scott Jr., we don't necessarily trust, and it would be his literal first NFL action. And Nahshon Wright is slated to be on injured reserve by that point in time. So the Cowboys are like, again, kind of like the center situation we had. We really like this depth, but they are one moment away from having it challenged in a serious manner.
Oh, absolutely. And this kind of brings back to what we had last year with all the moving and shaking of that position, where you're bringing guys off the street, you're bringing guys off other practice squads. Like I think it was Xavier Rhodes off the top of my head. So we're almost getting to that point if an injury happens. But like you mentioned, Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore, Deron Bland, I'm pretty confident in those 3 guys. But behind them, there's a lot of unknowns. Like you mentioned, Jordan Lewis. He hasn't played a lick of football, so we don't know. He says he's ready, and everything. All the quotes out there say he's ready to go. That's why it sounded like he was obviously. I felt like after what I saw from Michael Galkin from Dallas Morning News. I thought, I'm like, all right, he's probably making the 53, and then you get a guy like Eric Scott Jr., who we all loved. Everybody was like, all right, he's definitely going to be the 4th cornerback or 5th cornerback, and he was going to be, he was coming out guns a-blazing, but his stock is kind of like, he peaked, and then people bought in at a really high rate. And right now, if you sell on him, you're taking a loss. But again, he's a rookie. He's a late round draft pick. I still, you're not going to know what you have in the kid until he sees some live rounds against, for example, for the Giants. I expect him to be suiting up, because obviously Wright's not going to play. We're not going to have Iggy. I'm not going to try to butcher his name, but I'm going to say Iggy is not going to be active for at least a few games in my opinion. So Eric Scott's going to get some live rounds, and you know what? We may be talking about this after the Giants game. Like, okay, we saw some good things from Scott, so it might give us a little bit more pause. So we just got to hope that the injury bug does not bite the cornerback position, or any position for that matter, but especially the cornerback position. I mean, but luckily we do have safeties like Izzy Mukuamu. So we got Izzy and Iggy. So we might confuse that a little bit during the 2023 season. But Izzy is another guy who can play both. So I'm glad he has that versatility. So if Eric Scott struggles, you got Izzy Mukuamu who can who can slide in. So I'm not pushing the panic button or anything, but I'm a little cautiously optimistic on the back end besides the main 3.
Yeah, that's really fair. It is funny that Izzy is going to be like the supplement to Iggy. That's just, it's one of those like Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, sort of like weird coincidences. But okay. So I don't feel like panicked about cornerback. I was just talking to you guys off the ledge. Y'all were the ones who were really freaking out. Okay, let's move on over to the linebacker position. The Cowboys did waive Jabril Cox. Like basically every roster cut that came out on Tuesday. It was joined by the statement, to some degree, the Cowboys are hopeful they can get them back on the practice squad. We'll see, obviously, who does finalize and round out the Cowboys practice squad. But that being said, Cowboys have, and we mentioned it already, 3 classic, tried and true linebackers on their team. That's it. Leighton Vander Esch, Damone Clark, who's only entering his 2nd season, and Devin Harper for that matter as well. So kind of a precarious situation to be in. Now, Marquise Bell, the Cowboys, I've mentioned this in the video earlier. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively converting him to linebacker. So that being the case, Danny Phantom, we know how Dan Quinn likes to rock. Jaron Kearse essentially is a linebacker. Now you got Marquise Bell. Unfortunately, DeMarvion Overshown isn't there. I know Jess Haney wrote about Deion Jones potentially, being an option to reunite with Dan Quinn with the Cowboys now that he's available. Are you worried about this? Because this is the most shallow part. Like, look at the literal number of names at every other position group on the defensive side of the ball. And one of the ones that we're even giving linebacker is Marquise Bell, who's brand new. Like, it is a very, very shallow pool right there.
Yeah, I am worried in a sense because I start to like think worst case scenario here, and I look at a team. It's like last year, like how you saw how teams approach, went after our defense to try to take our pass rush out of the game when they start running the ball, and then we realize, hey, guess what? We're not very equipped in the middle, and then of course they have to go out trade for Hankins and everything, and we struggled against the run. What happens if teams start to run 6 linemen, 13 personnel, really heavy? You get offensive line, 300 pounders in the second level, and you're gonna have a little Marquise Bell out there trying to, get in the way. It worries me that we don't have true linebackers there if teams start to play to our weakness. And I mean, I like the group. I like the diversity of our team, and I think Dan Quinn has a plan, and I'm really interested to see it play out. But I will say this: if something happens to LVE, and our linebacker depth starts to, dwindle a little bit, and we're just having to roll out DBs out there, safeties out there that are just undersized, and they're just going to have to take on these big linemen, and teams can, find a way to beat the Cowboys by just pounding, running through us, and we just don't have the muscle mass to hold it up. So there's a little concern there because I've never seen this. Of all my roster predictions that I've done, and I've never seen us have basically 3 true linebackers on the team, and so that is an area for concern.
Tony, yeah, I mean, it makes sense what Danny's saying because one of the comments here from Melvin was, don't they play like 70% with 2 linebackers? They can play that way all day long until you play the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're just going to run it down your throat, or whoever the case may be. I mean, at any point in time. And so you can be prepared, but like if the circumstances change, you're up a creek. You can have Mozzie Smith, and he can even take off and become the guy that you want. But if they just have too much beef up front and you can't get there in the middle of your defense, you are a little bit screwed. And so I don't know that I think it's a risk or bold, but it is a little bit unconventional in terms of recent roster construction for the Cowboys specifically.
Yeah, as I sit here, I'm confident in saying this is incomplete. I know that they have a plan for safety to come down and play linebacker, Marquise Bell, the way they're going to use Donovan Wilson, Jaron Kearse is inside the box a lot. So I understand there's going to be plans. And even Mike McCarthy alluded to it. He didn't quite say like we're unfinished there, but he said things will start to make sense, later on. And I'm paraphrasing, but he pretty much said, as we get closer, you guys will kind of figure out what we're trying to do here. I do think whether it's waiver, trade, whatever the case may be, something is going to be brought into the linebacker room. And I know that Nicholas Morrow, who the Cowboys have had interest a couple times, just got released by the Eagles. Now, I don't know if that means because, once you get cut, you're always wary of why is this guy available, but they might kick the tires on this guy. So ultimately, whether it's Nicholas Morrow or somebody else, what Danny said is absolutely right. I mean, we're 1 or 2 injuries away from having 4 or 5, safeties on the field at one time. So it's just not really an ideal situation. And just like a lot of this roster and some of the things they're going to do, it's definitely unfinished, and they're going to put it all together here soon.
For what it's worth, and some of the chat is bringing this up, Brandon, the Cowboys could always drop Micah Parsons back, right? Like, I don't think any of us like that idea because we want to see Micah Parsons used in the best possible way, and that is rushing the passer. But perhaps the Cowboys want to get more opportunities for Sam Williams or whatever the case may be, and they feel like, hey, let's truly, back off Micah as a full-time pass rusher. That is one legitimate line of thought, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate line of thought, but I think we all can agree here that Micah Parsons is obviously best served to be on the edge and doing his thing there. But that's the thing. I think the Cowboys have already figured this out. They figured out, okay, we're a little thin here as it stands, but God forbid an injury happens, you can slide Micah back. He played linebacker, for many years, so he knows the position. He knows how Dan Quinn draws it up. But I'll bring up an interesting point where you looked at the compilation of defensive tackles. They could go a different route on this. They could, if an injury happens, and this is not conventional with the way the game is now, but against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who we all know like to run the ball, they could in theory put 5 guys on the defensive line and then throw 3 defensive tackles in the middle there and protect that middle just a little bit. It's a little unconventional, but they could run like a 5-2, so to speak, and have the 2 linebackers, which kind of helps the depth, or 1 linebacker and an extra safety like they have. So there's ways around it, and I think with the depth at defensive tackle that we have, I do think that might be something on the table that no one's considering at this point. So I could see it. I could see that, and a guy like Junior Fehoko, I think he's going to be a guy to look out for. he may not play right away, but in situations, throughout the season with injuries, that's a guy to look out for. He got enough beef. He's like 270, 280 if I'm off the top of my head. So a guy like that. So I think the Cowboys aren't done at linebacker. I think like a Moreau. I think that's a guy that people are interested in. I think that's if I was the Cowboys have kicked the tires on a guy like on him before anyway. So there's interest that has been there. So I'll say this. I think at this point linebacker it's not done yet. But worst case scenario I think they'll beef up the defensive line and run a 5-man line.
Okay. I think we've all expressed our concerns. They're legitimate. We're willing to give the Cowboys the benefit of the doubt. And Mike McCarthy, to your point, Tony. Speaking of Tony knows how to work the crowd. I mean, geez, like the crowd is here to give Tony points. Brandon, you did just pick up 5 points, but where things stand, Tony, kind of starting to skunk y'all. 43 points for Tony, 21 for Danny Phantom, 27 for Brandon. Guys, I mean, like maybe start telling jokes. You know what I mean? Doing some stand up. Like we've got to challenge things a little bit here. Tony can't just. I can't let this happen, Brandon. You've got
RJ, hold on. Tony's probably going to pull what I did last week, and he'll fumble it.
Well, Brandon, you did just pick up 3 points for the thought that you kind of pontificated on, but you lost one of them. So 2 more points in your favor. Danny, are you worried about potentially finishing with the bronze medal here?
No, you know what? If I don't make the cut, I'm sure I'll get on the practice squad, and then you'll find a role for me later. So you know what? It's all good.
Well, one player who did not make the cut today is at the beginning of our notable players left off the roster. That was the only true point of discourse, it felt like, today throughout Cowboys Twitter. The day started with everybody uniting against Kyle Brandt, which was a weird thing. I really don't have a passionate take on this, but whatever. I think Kyle's awesome. I don't want to get involved in that, but there was a really kind of united energy among Cowboys Twitter. And then Isaiah Land got waived and everybody was pissed off and everybody was like hating the team again. Tony, your thoughts on Isaiah Land not making the initial 53-man roster? And everybody gets a chance to answer this. Do you think he will find his way onto the roster within the first 4 weeks of the season?
I'll answer the second one first. I think yes. I think if he clears waivers, which I think is highly possible, Isaiah Land is, a good pass rusher. He is somebody that I think other teams will see value in, but I think there's a chance that we could sneak him past, and I think the Cowboys will kind of be able to wipe their brow off that they didn't mess that up. But yeah, I think of all the names on this list of Jabril Cox, Kelvin Joseph, Malik, Simi, Quentin, the only one that really kind of raised an eyebrow was Isaiah Land. I think everybody else kind of saw the other writing on the wall there, but I think it speaks to how deep this pass rush group is, because in a lot of instances, in a lot of years for teams that we root for the Cowboys, Isaiah Land's like in the 2 deep, and he's coming in, he's rushing the pass on 3rd down, and he's got a bigger role. And here he can't even make the initial 53. So I we'll see how it shakes out. I think I know a lot of people wanted him. I was one of those guys. I didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? I didn't know when I figured all transparency, when I figured my 53, I didn't know where to trim the fat. And so I kind of left them off, but it was with hopes that, the people who get paid millions of dollars to do this would be able to find a way to do it. And they weren't able to do it, but I'm fairly confident. You say the first month, I could see him being a factor in the first couple of weeks, to be honest.
Danny, Tony's kind of right. Like, once upon a time, we were like freaking out for sacks from George Selvey. You know what I mean? And now we're throwing away Isaiah Land when it comes to 53-man roster construction. So the tide has definitely turned in terms of talent amongst Cowboys pass rushers. You can't keep all the good players when you have a lot of them. And that's, this is ultimately an indication of a good problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I thought that Land had a chance simply because, I think by the time that they're able to develop him, it kind of fits perfectly when some of our aging veterans have expiring contracts. So I think that would just work good because we have Micah, we have Sam, and then who else? A few years from now. So I thought he had a chance because of that, because the Cowboys like to protect the talent. But one of the guys that I'm most disappointed that was left off was Josh Butler, and he's the guy. I'll just talk the whole show about Josh Butler if you let me.
To peel back the curtain a little bit here, Danny actually messaged our Slack channel earlier today and was like, "Hey guys, like I'm not going to be able to check for parts of today, so somebody please let me know when Josh Butler's been waived. I'm fully expecting it, but I hope I don't hear from any of you." Again, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but that really did happen.
That's supposed to be confidential, RJ. No, for sure.
Way to go.
No, I told you already about I'm concerned about the outside corner depth, and if he makes it through waivers, I'm gonna feel good. And these players typically do. And then I feel like we have more of an answer. Like I'd rather see him out there than Eric Scott Jr. or Nashawn Wright personally. But anyway, going back to what were we talking about?
Isaiah Land, the person that millions of people were upset about. But
it could have been 50-50. I had him on one and I had him off another. It's really tough. Just to really, we know we're going to have to let some good players go.
Brandon, I guess your thoughts on Isaiah Land, unless you want to go off on a Josh Butler shaped tangent like Danny Phantom did.
Yeah, I'm a huge Isaiah Land fan. I've been saying that on the writer's block the last couple of weeks. He's been one of my guys where I look at the roster construction and look at how teams are going to grab players off the waiver wire in three ways. You want to have a quarterback, you're going to protect the quarterback, and you want guys that can get after the quarterback. And Isaiah Land is good at that latter part. He is really good at getting after the quarterback. And just in that preseason game against the Seahawks, that tackle literally the offensive tackle for the Seahawks, he literally was false starting. I felt like almost on every play because he knew Isaiah was coming. That first step is so quick. He gets in the backfield really quick. He has a lot of skills. He was the Buck Buchanan Award winner in college. I know that's he's at the lower, he was at the lower division FCS level of football at that point, but he had high level offers before he stayed at Florida A&M. So he could have gone to an SEC school and he probably would have dominated. But people forget he had 19 sacks just in 2 years ago. So the guy could play some football. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he makes it. Now, Danny Phantom is not the only person that likes Josh Butler, by the way. I actually am a big fan of Josh Butler as well.
Danny's coming for your corner. Wow.
Now, Danny, you made some great points about Josh Butler. I mean, I watched him with the Michigan Panthers. I think I got that right in the other football league there. And then obviously at Michigan State, he was he didn't play a ton at Michigan State, but in the preseason for the Cowboys, he flashed ability to me, and I figured I felt like the same way as Danny. I wasn't going to be surprised if he didn't make the roster, but I knew he would kind of be on the fringe. I feel like that's the kind of guy the Cowboys should bring back to the practice squad, and I feel like they will because he is a little bit of an older prospect. I think he's 26 years old, so I think he's one of those guys. But for me, Isaiah Land, that I agree with the populace. Now, the issue that the people were getting on Kyle Brandt about things, leave Kyle alone. Kyle's a big wrestling
okay, all right.
like myself, so
we don't have to dive deep on that. So all right.
No.
Okay, we've kind of examined the 53 as is. Like I said, we had a video earlier in our feed on our YouTube channel where I discussed it by myself. If anybody wants to go watch that, that's why you should subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you get all of our wonderful videos right at the tip of your fingers for no dollars. So whatever. But anyway, before I did that, I did a live stream with our friends over at Bleacher Report. It was super cool, and I had this really great question that I'm going to steal and use here tonight. And so you're each going to have to answer it. And the challenge is that nobody can copy anybody. All right, so you've got to give I haven't done this in a long time here on the Roundtable, so you have to give completely and totally unique answers. So I'm going to ask the chat to pick who gets to go first. So everybody gets to say who they want to go first here, and then that person will pick who goes next. So chat, please let me know whether you think Tony, Danny, or Brandon gets to go first. The question that whoever they pick obviously gets to go first that has to answer, it's a two-parter. First is, who is the player you were most happy to see make the 53? That's what we're going to go with. And again, what we're going to hand out points on is creativity, ingenuity. I don't want you coming around here saying Dak Prescott. And I also don't want you coming around here being Hunter Lipke. We get it. We all love Hunter. All right, let's think a little bit outside the box. The overwhelming favorite is Danny. And because David Smith specifically said Tony last, I'm going to go ahead and go Danny, Brandon, Tony. So Danny, you were up first. Who is the player you were most happy to see make the Cowboys' initial 53-man roster, and why?
Yeah, I'm so glad that I get to go first, because I would have pitched a fit if somebody stole my guy, because I am absolutely ecstatic that Wanye Thomas made this football team. And I think the writing has started to been on the wall for a couple weeks now. But I mean, if you're following me on Twitter, you see I've been posting clips of him. I've been really promoting this guy. Just honestly didn't think nothing of him. He undrafted guy last year, kind of an afterthought, to be honest. But then once you start to really dive deep, and watching the preseason tape, you're like, who is this? Who is this number 30 making plays? And, I know that there's been somebody that made like the Cam Chancellor thing, every time they have a player, with Dan Quinn, they can think they can turn him into this. But I mean, I'm seeing some real potential with this guy. I mean, the guy wants to lay the wood. The guy is there for coverage. I think the way he processes and the way he diagnoses the plays and makes really quick decisions is super impressed with this guy. And he went from a guy to where I started out with like John Stevens Jr. That's my guy. He got hurt, and then then I'm like, okay, who's next? And then Wanye Thomas was my guy, and then I got so confident that he was going to make the team. Then I went to Josh Butler. So that's where I've been. But I am super happy for Wanye Thomas. I think he'll be a bigger piece to this team than some may think right now, because I think he's a good player.
That is a great answer, Nanny. You picked up a lot of points from the chat in the process. Current update on our score. Tony sitting on 39 points, but you were assigned having the task of going last, Tony. So hopefully you impress people. Danny, you have a commanding lead with 48 points. Brandon, you're up next with 34 points. Who is the player you are most happy to see make the 53? Wanye Thomas officially off the board, although 3 more points, actually 13 more points for Danny. But Brandon, you're up.
Yeah, so obviously you stole my thunder, RJ, with the Hunter Lepke. That was my choice. But my other choice is TJ Bass. I've said it earlier on the show. TJ Bass is, he was an undrafted free agent, which the road to making a 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent is a little bit deeper, because there are guys that get drafted that the team obviously saw enough stock in to draft them. So for me, it was an uphill battle for him out of the gate. My confidence in him never wavered. I watched enough of his film, in Oregon. One of my good friends is a huge Oregon fan, so I watched a lot of Oregon football, and he was one of those dudes on the offensive line that he just didn't give up. He stood his ground. Like some of his technical flaws that come out at times, which it was mostly on the outside, but once he was in the inside and when he played on that great Oregon line, he flourished, and I would like to see him maybe get some work at center, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen there. But I feel like he's a multi-talented guy. He's very versatile. And then for me, the road from undrafted to 53 is a really cool thing. And for me, I'm just very excited for TJ Bass.
That was another great answer. Really solid. We've got 2 undrafted free agents so far. That's always kind of a heartwarming story. Brandon, you've picked up a lot more points. I'll have to add 5 more here from Richard Smith for you. Okay, Tony, you're up. And then we have the second half of this question. I think it's pretty obvious what the other side of this coin is. But Tony, quickly before you offer us your answer, were Wanye Thomas or TJ Bass your initial instincts to go with, and did you have them stolen?
They weren't, but I would say Wanye was probably my second, but my first one is still available, so I'm glad I'm able to take him.
Wow, look at the flex. I love it. Go off.
So I will say Kevin Wolf in the chat, he's my guy. He's been asking me to do my own victory lap here, so I actually am going to take this, and I am ecstatic that Rico Dowdle not only made the roster, but is solidified and left no doubt that he's running back number 2 on this roster. I mean, everyone has a fan base or like a hive other than him. Hunter Lepke has a hive. Deuce Vaughn has a Cowboys Nation hive. Malik Davis, everyone in the world was writing Malik Davis in to be running back 2 as we got into training camp. And Rico Dowdle, all he did was just everything right. Okay. The only thing that's hurt him has been his availability, not his ability. So he's gone in there, and despite, many people connected within the team telling you like, hey, Rico's the guy. Hey, Rico's the guy. Like, listen, understand, Mike McCarthy's telling us that Rico's the guy. And all he did was just control that. And then when I saw preseason game 3 and I saw Hunter Lepke get all the touches, and Deuce Vaughn was sitting there eating seeds and Rico Dowdle was chewing seeds, and they all had a ball cap on, I knew that my job was done. Okay. I knew that ultimately Rico Dowdle had won, and I'm excited. He hasn't earned anything yet. He's just earned the opportunity, but his injury history is obviously a concern. If he's out there and he's healthy, I fully believe that he could be a solid, very good running back 2 for us. I'm excited to see that he gets the chance now.
That was a very, very solid kind of twist of an answer, saying like not only that he made the team, but that he specifically, is RB2. Like it was a little bit more conviction. You didn't pick up enough points to close the gap now, Tony, where we're at. You have 54 points, Danny 61. Brandon, you have the lead going into the final question, unless there are more points. Tony has just picked up 5 more, so I'll adjust this quickly here. I just realized that I should have ended with the question that we just discussed because it was really positive. And so that's my bad. Hey, whoops. I really don't have anything else to say. So sorry. Who was the player you were most sad to see not make the 53? And again, we're awarding points based off of creativity. So if you go Isaiah Land based on the conversation that we had, well, it's up to the commenters here, but I'm not going to reward that type of situation. So we'll go back around the bend. Danny Phantom, who were you most sad to see? Most sad to see not make the 53-man roster. And I'm not going to stipulate that it has to be someone who we don't think will return, but it's up to you. Take it whatever direction you want.
Am I allowed to pick Josh Butler? I don't know. Jeez. Who am I most sad? Josh Butler would be my choice. But I think that it's really tough I'm going to say that I'm most sad about the Josh Ball situation. I know I get a lot of heat for this. Go ahead and start deducting. I don't play for points, but I think that the way he was playing really would have given us a little more, solidify our interior line. I think that was important. And now we're kind of left with kind of like, what do we do sort of thing. So I'm disappointed that played out the way it did. But maybe TJ Bass can solve all that problem. I don't know. So I guess that would be my non-Josh Butler answer. But I want to say this. I want to throw this out at Tony right now because I know we've had some Malik Rico stuff. And first off, I agree with everything. I mean, Rico has impressed. I've put clips on about Rico. I mean, so I want to see him succeed because that helps us. And I totally agree. RB2 right now. But I want to say this. I'll have a little side bet, and this is a little bit morbid, but I think that Malik finishes with more yards than Rico, and I know that sounds terrible.
What the hell, dude?
Hey, you know what? I'm just saying. Hey, you got to take all the information with what you have, and that's just where my feeling is. So I mean, that's why I can't get too overjoyed about. Like if everyone's trying to tell me, like, you know what, Tyron's fine. He's going to play the whole season. Come on, give me a break. And try to convince me of that. No one's going to buy that. So why should I feel like Rico is going to be able to just suddenly just dodge the injury bug at one of the most brutal positions in NFL. So it's a concern of mine. That's all I'm saying. Great. He's played great. If he stays healthy, super fantastic year possibly, but I don't know. I mean, there's certainly some concerns there.
Well, I feel the sunshine and rainbows coming from Danny Phantom right now. So you did get some points deducted there, Danny. But I think what everyone should appreciate is the conviction that you speak with. You don't say anything you don't believe. So I'll give you that, Danny Phantom. Good for you. Brandon, player you were most sad to see not make the 53. And by the way, look, this is a reality, right? Like, we love more than 53 players. That's what makes this process so difficult. So Brandon, the floor is yours.
So I'm going to hit that drum again with the offensive line. We've hammered that drum tonight. And the guy that I am very sad to see go at this point is Matt Farniok. I think Matt Farniok was a guy, we'll see. I know we mentioned it a minute ago. He may come back. We'll see how the juggling goes with all the roster and everything. But as it stands, he's not on the 53-man. And the biggest issue at this point is the center position. So if Biadasz goes down, we're in big trouble because there's nothing behind him right now. And Farniok is a guy that not only can play the center position, but he also can play on the guard as well. So he can play. He's a versatile guy. He's been in the system, in this system for 3 years already. So he's been in the league. He was a former 7th-round pick out of Nebraska. He's worked his way up the depth chart, so to speak. And I had him on my 53. I figured he was a shoo-in because of the depth. I figured, they're going to solidify. I think Asim Richards was going to make it. I wasn't surprised there. I wasn't surprised about TJ Bass, obviously. But the guy that I was very, the Farniok to me was a guy. He's, I know it's weird to say, but he's been here for 3 years. But amongst the roster, at the position, at that positional group, he's one of the older guys in the interior because you have the most experienced guys. Because besides Biadasz, you're kind of screwed at that point. So Farniok's my guy, and it comes down to depth issues because the most important position group besides the quarterback is on the offensive side is to protect the quarterback. So if there's any liabilities there, plus it's very important to have that center quarterback exchange right on point. So you don't want to bring somebody in who hasn't had that. It's the little things, but that could cost the Cowboys a game if there's a mishandled snap. Something happens there. So this is very important. So Matt Farniok is my guy, and hopefully it turns around pretty quickly, and he is back on the roster in short order.
Tony Catalina, land this plane.
So let me just touch on the Matt Farniok thing for a quick second, because there was somebody that I was gonna mention, but like we had talked about, we had Michael Gelkin on the First and 10 podcast, and he was actually speaking about Matt Farniok, and the reason why I was interested in that answer is because Michael Gelkin kind of told us, like, matter of factly, he's like, the progression from Matt Farniok was there to the point where, like, it wasn't even like a stalemate, like he actually regressed. So I'm interested to see how they handle. And Farniok did not improve. He actually got worse over time. And that's kind of the sentiment within the building. So it's interesting to see how the Farniok deal works out. But I digress. What I am going to say that I was most sad, and it's probably not going to be a popular answer, but like Danny said, I'm not playing for the crowd. I'm playing for honestly how I feel. I was upset to see the Sean McEwen not make the team over Hunter Lepke, because realistically, the way they talked about Sean McEwen that was probably one of the hardest decisions they had to make. They said that he was a guy they tried to find any way to keep on the roster. And ultimately, the way I look at roster construction in today's NFL, and I know what Mike McCarthy said, and I know he likes fullbacks, and I know they want to run the ball more, but ultimately, I thought the tight end 4 would probably help the team more than a fullback. I mean, what are people's expectations for a Hunter Lepke, right? Is he going to touch the ball twice a game? Is he going to pass block? Like, what are we doing? Is most of his role is going to be what we've already seen Sean McEwen to be able to do: special teams, be a tough guy. I think if you're going to talk offensively, Sean McEwen is going to have a bigger impact on this team. And I fully expect him to be back. But I felt after going through this last year, where if you remember, Sean McEwen didn't make the initial 53 last year because of Peyton Hendershot, and they brought him back. He ended up having a big role on the 53. I see something similarly happen here. Ultimately, I think that guy, what he's done, he's got confidence with Fossil in this offense, and Lunda Wells, the tight end coach, he's going to end up having a greater impact on this team in 2023 than Hunter Lepke will.
I got to say, I know the other question was more optimistic, but this one was more impressive in terms of the quality of your answers. Some of you, I would say Danny and Tony, you really peed into the wind. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's, you can call it ignorance or bravery. I mean, either way, Tony came in knowing that everybody was all in love with Hunter Lepke and said, I don't care. I'm going to hate all over it. So I'll offer another, 30 seconds for points to be handed out. Whoever you want to go to, but we're tabulating the final situation here, and it looks like it's leaning in one way. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it. So, all right, votes are in, things are over. Danny, who do you think won?
Well, I think Tony might have, messed up his chances there. And same with me. I don't know. It's probably, I wasn't paying attention to the score before, but I think
hard work on my end.
I'm trying to focus on I'm trying
Great
to.
job, RJ.
I'm gonna go with Brandon. I think he did the most pandering of the group. And I think that, I don't know. That's where I'm gonna go.
Kevin gave Tony 5 points for the hat, but that came after I had closed the ballots. But Clarence and Rick did both get their 5 points in for Tony before then. Sorry, Brandon. Tony eked it out. 77 points for Tony, 66 for Danny, but a nice 69 point performance from you, Brandon. So if you can't win, I mean, that's the way to lose at the very least. Tony, congratulations, 77. It must be your lucky night. I mean, and you landed, you really did land. It was turbulence, you know what I mean? But sometimes the greatest pilots, they handle it. They turn on that fasten seatbelt line, even if they're at 30,000 feet up in the air. You did it, my friend.
Listen, I had a pilot tell me one time that turbulence doesn't mean anything. It's just a part of being in the jello. So you always make it out of turbulence. So I like it.
Who would you like to thank?
I like to thank the listeners and the viewers, because without them, I mean, these are my people. I say it every time. So if Brandon's gonna pander, allow me to pander a little bit. These are my people.
Wow. Kevin has said that you deserve the win tonight, Tony. Well done. And David has noted that you have gone back to back, which you said that you did not know that you had ever done. I mean, we'll have to check the Great Hall with the record books, obviously. But I don't know if you have. Brandon, how do you feel? It was right there. You had it. It was just those last 10 points at the very end.
Yeah, that's okay. Good job, Tony. And no, I was not pandering, guys. As you guys saw last week, my take on Mike McCarthy caught a lot of people off guard a little bit. So I don't pander. I speak.
Yeah, I know. I was in the comments. I remember that.
I know. I saw you in there for a few times, Danny. So I'm not a pandering type. I say how I feel, and to really quick. I disagree with Tony with the McEwen thing. I do think Lipke's I do think Lipke offers more. I like McEwen, but I think Lipke has more versatility, and I think the Cowboys offense is gonna. I think the offensive coaches like Mike McCarthy are going to want that versatility over Sean McEwen. That's just my take.
I like this proposal from Casey, Tony. It says new stipulation to propose. Tony has to keep winning every roundtable. Otherwise, he has to remove his hat for an entire podcast. Tony has stepped his beard game up this year. That's worth saying. So congrats on the manicuring that's happening in the facial area for you, Tony. But yeah, next time you don't win, you got to take the hat off for a whole episode.
I'll do it. And I'll tell you what, I went an entire 13 months without a haircut, and I got one last week, and I swear to you, not one person has mentioned it. Not one single person. So I had it down to my shoulders, and not one person has noticed. So maybe I should have let it grow up.
Wow. Okay. We had a good crowd tonight. If you're still with us live or if you're watching after the fact, please follow our BT Beards on social media, on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Tony, our winner, at Tony_Catalina. Danny, whose account you can find highlights of Wanye Thomas at, and Josh Butler, of course, at Danny Phantom 24, and Brandon is at Icebreaker 21. Tony, tell us something interesting about the world as we leave. A fun fact, something that everyone, after you are done saying, I will go, wow, I learned something today.
Oh, I guess there's something called like a blue moon supposed to happen tonight, and it won't happen again till 2037 or something like 2037. So fact check that. But I think I read that on Twitter. That's all I got. Go and look at the moon.
Well done, Tony. Great job.
Go and look at the moon.
You want me to bring in the moon, RJ? You want me to throw a lasso around it? And
you've seen that movie? You've seen?
I have seen it.
Great job, Tony.
Okay, good job, Tony. Yay.